Hey guys, so we are going to move on from one variable statistics, which is just looking at one set of data, and we're going to move into two variable statistics, which compares two different types of data. So we've got a few things in our toolbox: marginal frequency, joint frequency, and conditional frequency. So remember, frequency is just how many or how much of something. So when we're dealing with two variables, all right, that's when we use a two-way frequency table. So notice our table, you're going to make sure you pay attention to the headings. So in this problem, I haven't even read anything, and I know that I am comparing different types of social media and then grades. So to fill this in, we're literally just going to use our word problem and fill in what we know. And then we might, if we're not given all of the information, we might have to work backwards and find some other things. So at DuPont Middle School, 635 students were asked which social media site they updated the most on a daily basis. So 635, that's of all of the people who were interviewed. So 635, that's our grand total. It's a total of all the grades. So notice all of the grades totals will be here, and it's also the total of everybody in the social media platform they like. So then we have 75 seventh graders said they used Instagram the most. So we've got 75 seventh and Instagram. Okay, so be careful, make sure you're paying attention to both of your headings. There were a total of 321 students that said Facebook was the most updated. So a total, and we're looking at Facebook. So Facebook, and put that in my total. Of the 247 eighth graders, 23 of them updated Instagram the most. Okay, so we've got two things going on here. So the first piece, of the 247 eighth graders, so looking at eighth graders, so of my 247, so that's out of all of the eighth graders, so I need to go to the total column, and I know I have 247 eighth graders. Now of those, 23 of them updated Instagram. So of my eighth graders, 23 did Instagram. Okay, there are 181 sixth graders at DuPont. Okay, so my sixth graders, total of 181. And of the, okay, so again, we're looking at a category now. I'm running out of colors. So of the 158 Twitter users, so again, of all of my Twitter users, so of all of them, there's 158 of them, 45 were sixth graders. So I go and find my sixth graders. There were, oh shoot, I'm really running out of colors. So there were 123 eighth graders using Facebook. Eighth graders using Facebook, 123. Okay, so we have used all of our information, but notice all of our boxes are not filled in. So think about, how are we going to problem solve to fill in the missing blanks? Well, when I'm going to look at look at my rows and columns, which ones are only missing one piece of information. Those will be the easiest to fill in first. So if I look at my bottom row, I know the grand total is 635. So if I've got 321, 158, I'm going to go ahead and get my calculator and do some simple subtraction. So 635 minus 158 and 321 gives me 156 left over. And I'm going to come over here to the total column. So I know again our grand total is 635. So if I take out my 247 and my 181, I've got 207. Okay, so now I have a completely filled in row and a completely filled in column. So again, I'm looking for where there are areas that are missing just one piece. So if I look at Instagram, we know 156 total prefer Instagram. So I'm going to take that 156 and again, take out our 23 and our 75. And now I'm only missing one for 6th and Facebook. So looking at total 6th graders, there's 181. And we know 45 like Twitter and 58 like Insta. So that leaves us with 78 preferring Facebook. And now again, I've got a beautiful little column missing only one. So we know 321 prefer Facebook. So if we take out our 6th graders and our 8th graders, we are left with 127th graders that prefer Facebook. Okay, so now I'm looking at my row of 7th graders. So again, we have a total of 207 7th graders that were surveyed. So take out the Facebook and Insta, and only 12 of them use Twitter. And same thing for 8th. So of my 247 8th graders, take out Insta and Facebook. I'm left with 101. Whenever you're doing these, it's not a bad idea to go through and just double check and make sure that everything adds up correctly. So I've filled in all of this information, and it says the first on our left side, it says find the joint and marginal frequencies. Okay, my key word here, frequencies. So that's just how many. So my joint frequencies, they join two categories. So everything in the middle, these are all joint frequencies. Okay? And then our marginal frequencies, those are in the margins of our table. So our marginal frequencies are in our margin. 635, the grand total, it doesn't usually get joined into either of those categories. Okay, so the marginal are the totals of our rows or our columns, and then the joint frequencies, they join two categories. Now, notice our heading, it says joint and marginal relative frequencies. Okay, so if you're talking relative frequencies, that means relative to the whole. So if I go to find a relative frequency, I'm going to take that number, that 78, and put it out of the whole. So 78 divided by 635, and that would give us a joint relative frequency. Okay, because it's a joint frequency, but it's relative to the whole. So same thing if I look down at our total of Facebook users, so 321 out of the 635, that would be a marginal relative frequency. So it all depends on what your question is asking, whether they want a regular frequency or whether they want a relative frequency. So are they just asking how many or how much, or are they asking, is it compared to the whole? So when we look at our first question, how many students updated Instagram the most? So again, keyword, how many? So I just want to know the number of students that updated Instagram the most. So how many updated Instagram the most? Our 156. Okay, so our 156 updated Insta the most, and that is a marginal frequency. It's just asking how many. It's not comparing it to anything. Now on the next one, it says what percentage. All right, so that's not asking specifically how many. That's a percentage, and a percentage is a ratio. It's out of something. So what percentage of students surveyed are in the 6th grade? Okay, well, what percentage of students surveyed? So key here, of students surveyed. Whenever you say of, that tells you, well, what is it out of? So of the students surveyed, so that means it's of the 635 people that are surveyed, how many of those are in the 6th grade? So here we come over to our 6th grade. How many were in the 6th grade? 181. Now it is asking for percentage, so we do need to convert our probability. So 181 divided by 635. I'm going to go ahead and round to the nearest hundredth, so I get 0.285. So I'm going to round to 0.29. So about 29% of the students surveyed are in the 6th grade. Okay. So how many 8th graders update Facebook the most? Again, looking at our question, how many? So I'm not looking for a relative frequency. I'm just looking for how many. So the frequency. So how many 8th graders? So 8th graders. So looking at 8th graders, how many 8th graders update Facebook the most? 123. Okay, so our last question, if a student is chosen at random, what's the probability that the student is in 7th grade? So if a student is chosen at random, so we're still talking about the whole group of students, what's the probability that the student is in 7th grade? So out of all of the students, so out of those 635, what are we looking for again? Probability that they are in 7th grade. So our 7th grade students. And we're looking for probability. So probability, I've seen it left as a ratio, and I've also seen it as a decimal. And that all depends on, the test maker, what they want. So I'm getting 0.3259. So probability, about 33 hundredths. So, or 33%. They were chosen at random were 7th grade. So when you're asking questions with regards to when you're comparing two variables, you have to be careful because sometimes they'll ask you things that you'll want to say and answer because you can't look strictly at the numbers. Because look, they didn't survey an equal number of 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. So you can't just look for the higher numbers and say, oh, this was their favorite. Well, that depends. Are you asking out of that certain grade? Are you asking out of everybody? So we need to really look at those totals when they're asking us questions to make sure make sure it makes sense. You're not just picking the first thing. They're like, oh yeah, that sounds good. Okay, on to the next one. Okay, so joint and marginal relative frequencies. Those are always relative to the whole, relative to the grand total. We have another type of relative frequency, and that's dealing with conditional. So conditional relative frequencies aren't out of this grand total. They're out of one of the marginal totals. So looking here, we have clients at Kirkman Road Veterinary Clinic. So we were talking about feline and canine. So we've got dogs and cats and whether they are microchipped or not. So which kind of pet is more likely to be microchipped? So again, which kind of pet? So I'm talking about cats and dogs. I cannot just say which one's more likely to be microchipped. Oh, canine, right? Because 250? Yeah, but it's which kind of pet. So we need to pay attention to the totals because we have a completely different number of felines versus canines that were surveyed. That sounds silly saying a dog or a cat's being surveyed, but you know what I'm saying. So, which kind of pet is more likely to be microchipped? Well, we need to look at this because 58 felines are most likely to be microchipped, but it's 58 out of 167. So that gives me about 0.35. And if we look at our canines, so 250 out of the 277, well, I can clearly look at that and I know it's going to be dogs, but I'm going to prove it anyway because we're going to be diligent. So, oh my gosh, yeah, about 90% of dogs are microchipped. So which kind of pet is more likely to be microchipped? Definitely canine. So again, what is it out of? So here we were talking about what kind of pet. So is it out of the total amount of felines or the total amount of canines? So this next one, what percentage of cats, so we're just looking at cats, are not microchipped? So of my 167 cats, not microchipped, so 109 of those 167, and we're talking about percentage. Hopefully you guys are using your calculators to get practice as well. So that gives me about 0.65, so about 65% of cats are not microchipped. Well, that kind of makes sense since a lot of cats are indoor cats. All right, what percentage, again, look at your group. So who are we talking about? What percentage of dogs are not microchipped? So again, of dogs. So out of the canines. So of the 277 canines, what percent are not microchipped? 27. And just because we know about 90% were, I'm going to say this is 10, but double check. Yep. 0.097. We did say percentage again, yes. Okay, so about 10% of dogs are not chipped. Okay, so of the pets that are microchipped, so now we're looking at a different category this time. of the pets that are microchipped. So how many are microchipped? So of the 308 that are microchipped, what percentage are dogs? So of the 308 that are microchipped, 250 are dogs. So, sorry if you can hear my dog. 0.81. So about 81%, let's see, of chipped pets are dogs. All right, so of the pets that are not microchipped, so we're looking at a different category. So not microchipped. So of the 136 that are not microchipped, what percentage are cats? So we're going to use that 109 number again. So about 80% that are not chipped are cats. So hopefully the biggest takeaway from this, when you are looking at two-way frequency tables, when they are asking you questions, make sure you're paying attention to who is it relative to. Is it relative to a specific category? If it's relative to a specific category, then it is a conditional relative frequency. If it is just relative to the whole, if it's out of everybody, out of the whole population that was surveyed, then you're going to be looking at either joint relative frequencies or marginal relative frequencies. Just depends. Again, is it joining two categories or is it just one of the totals out of everything? Okay, so hopefully maybe some of that looked familiar to you guys, maybe not. This week you're going to be working on topics 2 and 3 out of your workbooks. Okay, well, have an awesome week.